Start recording. So I had stopped by saying, I think I had ended by, I was trying to tell you about your first assignment, which is already on Moodle. It's a group assignment, not very difficult. I have some articles there for you. As a group, select one article. I've divided them to research that is ICT related and research that is IS related. So you select one article as a group, identify those basic research concepts or components that we shall discuss today and tomorrow, and then you present them next Friday. So please, if you can access Moodle, please do that. Formulate groups. Again, like I had said, I don't know how many are in ICT, how many are in IS, but try to formulate groups between 4 and 5 members. Let it not go beyond 5. And you can begin that with your first assignment. I've also put up the lecture slides for today and tomorrow, and I also put up some reading materials as well for you on Moodle. So please try and access. Then whatever recording I'll have for today, I'm going to pass it on to ICT, then link it. The ICT uploads it to YouTube, then I link it in Moodle for you to download and listen to at your leisure as soon as possible. So with that, I want to welcome you all. First things first, let me introduce myself. My name is Sheba Nyakaisiki. Let me see if I can just briefly show you my face. I hope you can see me. That's what I look like. So let me just go back off. I'm a lecturer in the Faculty of Science, Department of ICT. I am, my first degree is in development studies, ethics and development studies. Then at my master's degree, I transitioned to computing. And then at bachelor's, at PhD level, I combined both degrees. So I did my research in the field of ICT, specifically mHealth, and developed a model that can help design and evaluate an mHealth application in a developing context. So that is briefly my background. I'm also taking a number of modules in the program of ICT, specifically ICT management, ICT strategy, and I don't know what else I may be given, but those are the two so far that I have, and I'm sure I'll meet some of you back again in that program. So briefly, that's who I am. Can I ask, may I know who I'm teaching? Is it possible to know who I'm teaching? Can we start with the Teopista? Can you tell us what program you're taking and what you do and what you hope to pick from the program itself and then also from this module, research methods?
Everyone, my name is Adoch Topista. I'm currently taking on the Masters in Information Systems course. I'm a volunteer as an IT support officer at Lira Regional Referral Hospital, and hopefully at the end of this course, the whole master's program in information systems, hope to have gained knowledge in that. I'm really looking forward to knowing a lot about database management systems. Yeah.
Thank you, Topista. Can we hear from Edward Kayanja?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Edward Kayanja, and I'm undertaking a Master's in Information Systems. Currently, I'm into Systems Administration at the National IT Authority, and hopefully this course unit can add onto my knowledge base, and I'm willing to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Nice to meet you. Emmanuel? Emmanuel, then afterwards we shall have Chivuna. He says he has a unstable network. Chivuna, will you be next after Emmanuel? Emmanuel? Hello, Emmanuel, are you there?
Hello, Doctor.
Yes, Emmanuel.
Am I clear?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay, sorry, it was my mic. Called Emmanuel Ndejia. I pursued this course and working with UGCL. Yes, that's all.
Thank you.
I don't know, is there anything I'm missing?
No, I think that is it. You're doing which? Are you doing IS or ICT?
I'm doing IS.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Emmanuel. Can we hear from Chivuna?
Thank you, Doctor. My name is Chivuna Kanchiriho. I work with the UPDF at the rank of lieutenant. I'm a graduate of security and forensics, computer security and forensics bachelor's with a master's in security and strategic studies. And then in this case, I'm doing MIS. I'll be glad to learn more about the information systems because I've been deployed in the IT sector in the UPDF. Okay,
Thank
Doctor,
you.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivuna. You're most welcome. Can we hear from Gertrude?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Gertrude.
My name is Gertrude Amodoi. I work as an IT officer at Medical Research Council. I'm glad to be part of the university to add on to my knowledge, my papers. I am offering Masters in ICT, and I'm hoping to widen my knowledge and learn more from you, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
You.
Thank you, Gertrude. Can we hear from Henry Sevunya?
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Henry Sevunya. I work with Private Bank as a banking administrator from a class of information system. I'm glad to be here and hopefully that the knowledge I will learn here to advance my knowing about research methods. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Henry. Can we hear from Hilda?
Good evening, dear members.
Good evening, Hilda.
My name is Mtenyo Hilda, taking on Master's Information Systems, and I'm currently working as an examination coordinator at Kampala University in Gaba, and I hope to gain a wider knowledge in this course as a whole, information systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda. Can we hear from Iga Fred?
A very good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Iga Fred is my name. IT aide at the National Union of the Disabled Persons of Uganda. Master's Information System is what I'm taking on. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Fred. Can we hear from Chintu George William?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chintu George William, offering Masters in Information Systems, a profession teacher of ICT and entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can we hear from Liovia Pius?
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Pius Liombia, and I am doing a master's in information systems. And currently, I'm an ICT technician at Uganda Management Institute. I am happy to be here and hoping to learn a lot from this class. Thanks, Doctor.
Thank you, Pius. Can we hear from Mbabazi Flavia?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mbabazi Flavia. I'm into business, but currently I'm doing a master's in information systems, whereby at the end of this master's, I want to venture into academia, and I'm happy to be part of this class. Thank you.
You're most welcome, Flavia. Can we hear from Eric? Muumba Eric.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Momba Eric, currently doing a master's in ICT and working with Mantra Technologies as a network and cybersecurity engineer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Can we hear from Solomon? Then we can hear from David. I think David Kizito came in late.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Solomon Malinga. I currently work for Jubilee Health Uganda, and I am the Business Technology Solutions Assistant Manager. But basically, I specialize in infrastructure, network infrastructure. So I'm hoping to gain as much knowledge as I can from this course, MICT, to help me build my career. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Solomon. Can we hear from David? David, you came in a bit late. We were introducing ourselves.
Yes. Good morning, Doctor. Sorry, good evening, Doctor.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening to the team. I'm glad to join you this evening. Sorry, I came in late. I was thinking the class starts at 6 exactly. But I'll be informed about the time next time. But I'm David Kizito. I'm a software engineer. I'm currently working with Kampala Capital City Authority. I'm happy to be here and glad to join the team. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David. I see we have a wide variety of participants from different areas. So I think this is going to be a really interesting class. Most welcome to everyone. Let us begin because we missed the last time, but I'm sure we shall cover up. So I'm going to start by sharing slides, sharing my screen. And all of this, like I said earlier, all of this is there already in Moodle. So I'm sure once you get the link from Emmanuel, you'll be able to access all the things that are here and as well as the recording. As soon as we finish with the recording, with the class, I'll send it to ICT. ICT will upload and I'll share the link on Moodle as well. So this is, we're going to start with an introduction to research. Before I go further, what do we know? What do we understand research to be? Just thoughts, nothing academic. What do you understand research to be?
Yes, Doctor, can I go?
Yes, please.
Research could be a solution to a particular problem.
Okay, that is true. Thank you. Any other contributions? Any other thoughts on what we believe research to be? Like Fred said, research could be a solution to a particular problem. In detail, research is a systematic inquiry. So we start by calling it a systematic inquiry. So meaning there is a process, there is an actual method to making an inquiry. An inquiry, as we know, I could walk into a particular building and inquire, looking for this particular office. That's an inquiry. I can inquire about something. Does this exist? Inquiries, we do them daily. And usually inquiries are quite simple. They are quite simple. I can walk into the home where I live and ask the members in the household, what are we having for dinner? What are we having for supper? Is everyone at home? Those are inquiries. And those are simple inquiries. But when it comes to research, it is systematic. The inquiry, it's an inquiry. You're seeking to know something, but there's a particular methodology attached to it. When we talk about a system, something that is systematic, a system, like we know, is made up of components. So we start with, and each component is important, is necessary in order for this inquiry to be research or to be scientific in nature. Yeah, each component of this inquiry should be present and it should be visible as we make this inquiry. So what we are going to learn when we talk about research methods, we talk about the word, there's research and then there's research methods. The research methods are simply the components and tools that help you carry out research, or rather make that systematic inquiry. So this class is essentially going to teach you those components and tools that you will use to carry out that systematic inquiry. So we don't just only inquire, we also make a report in a particular format. We also make a report of this inquiry using research methods. And the outcomes of this inquiry, we make it accessible to others, normally through publications. Okay? So that's the unique thing about research. Whereas a simple inquiry, like for example, if I decide to inquire on how to grow maize, I may not make that information available to others. It may be just for my own consumption. As Sheba, I want to learn how to grow maize. Or I may decide to make an inquiry on how to bake a cake. That may be for simply my own consumption. I want to bake a cake. Or I may want to learn how to bake a cake to start a business. I will not necessarily report to others the outcome of my inquiry. But research, there must be an outcome which is made accessible to others. Now, this is where Fred's answer comes in. It concerns seeking solutions to a problem. Seeking solutions to a problem or answers to meaningful questions. Now, this point is very important, but it can also be quite misleading. And this is one of the things that we really, really, really must understand to its fullest extent. We are seeking solutions to a problem. But what kind of problem are we talking about? And what kind of solution are we talking about? Take an example. If I have a problem of a backache, it's a problem. My back aches. And automatically, if you have anything to do with your body, where do you go? You go to a medical doctor. Which medical doctor will examine you, diagnose you, prescribe medication or treatment. It may not be necessarily medication, but treatment to solve my back problem. Now, should we call that research? Do we call that research? Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. I think it's inquiry.
It's a simple inquiry. It is something. David, you have something to add?
No, I was just responding that we can hear you very well, Doctor.
Okay, thank you. So this one is that one is an inquiry, and or rather it's a problem, but not a research problem. My backache is a problem, but it's not a research problem. Okay. Then what then should it be? We've talked about meaningful questions are expressed in a way that indicates that what indicates that what you will accept as an answer. There should be meaningful questions. And the question is, what is that meaningful question? What is that meaningful question? There are some questions that are not answerable. There are certain things that may not be answerable. They are not meaningful. What then does it mean to have a meaningful question? And I think we shall look at that when we come to research, to understand what research is. But we're also going to understand what is positivism versus phenomenology. We're also going to understand that in detail. We shall, in our research, in understanding research, we shall understand what is a research philosophy. Okay? These are components of research. Now, most of the time when we read a dissertation, you will not necessarily see someone talk about the research philosophy, but it's there in the background. It is something that guides you. People have philosophies. They have philosophies that guide them. They don't necessarily talk about them, but there are philosophies that guide them in their everyday life, on how they deal with people, on how they deal with problems, on how they deal with different situations. Some human beings have those philosophies that guide them. So also does research. Research, there's a philosophy that will guide your research. We shall also talk about that in detail. Your research philosophy determines your approach, how you approach your research. For example, again, if I give the example of individuals who have life philosophies that guide their lives, they determine on how they will approach a problem, how they will approach their current circumstances, and so on and so forth. There are people who have a philosophy of honesty. Yeah. Someone will say, whatever the case, I must be honest. How I talk to people, how I approach a problem, how I approach difficult situations, honesty should be my philosophy. So also in research, that research philosophy teaches you on what approach you'll use to tackle your research. Then there is a strategy, or in other words, somewhat we call methodology or method. Yeah. So the method and strategy, these are used interchangeably. The method that we use to tackle our research problem. This method can be you can use a multi-method approach. Yeah. The methods are guided by our approach or philosophy. Now, we can decide to use multiple methods to tackle a problem. Multiple methods. Then once we apply our methods, we have our findings. So our findings should be credible. We should be able to, we should be able to stand up and say, these findings are true. They have been, we have used a true scientific method, and we've been objective, and therefore our findings are credible. Then we have ethics guides our research design. Yeah, Ethics guides our research design. Why? Because we are making an inquiry, which inquiry we are going to communicate, the findings we are going to communicate to the world or to a specific community. To a specific community. So the ethical part is extremely important. Number one, that we have followed the right scientific method. That two, we have actually collected data and we have evaluated it or analyzed it and have come up with a meaningful conclusion. Yeah. Now, what we have before you is what we refer to as our research onion. So the research onion helps us to peel away at the different components of research, the different components and tools that we shall use within research. At the outermost part, we have the research philosophy. In the innermost part, we have our data collection tools or methods, the innermost part. The outermost part is the research philosophy, and we move further within the research onion. Let us start with what is our research philosophy. What is research philosophy? Now, if we just Google, we are all online, if we just decided to Google and find out what is philosophy, let us just Google, what is philosophy in general? What do you get? Yes, Topista.
According to Google, it says it's the systematic study of fundamental questions about reality, existence, knowledge, values, reason, mind, and language, stemming from the Greek love of wisdom.
Yes, thank you.
Just that.
Thank you, Topista. So it is the systematic study of fundamental questions. We have philosophers like Socrates. I think Socrates asked the question, how do I know that I exist? That's a fundamental question. How do I know that I exist? There were others, I think that was Socrates or others, I think it was Aristotle, who asked a question, the fundamental question of how do we know what is truth? What is reality? How do we know? Yes, David.
Thanks, Doctor. Mine says that philosophy is the study of most basic questions about reality,
Yes.
knowledge, value, and reason.
Yes.
And it tackles them using clear definitions and logical arguments.
Yes.
The word comes from a Greek word which is philosophia, which means love of wisdom.
Yes. Thank you,
Okay,
David.
thank you. That is it.
Thank you, David. So we can see what philosophy already, what it's helping us to seek something logically, to seek knowledge logically, to answer certain questions logically. And so considering we're dealing with research which is making a systematic inquiry, there must be a philosophy that is guiding you. Now, when you begin to read about these research philosophies, specifically positivism and phenomenology, they are like two warring camps, almost like for those of us in ICT, the battle between the open source community, and then those who are dealing in proprietary software, like for instance Microsoft. Actually, most of the time when you look at the fight between the two, it is normally between the open source community and Microsoft enterprise. But anyway, it's all simply a a perspective. It's all about perspective. In reality, there is no right and wrong. Both philosophical viewpoints are extremely important. Yeah? Both philosophical viewpoints are extremely important and they are necessary. So how do they differ? They differ in logic. The study of valid reasoning. How do I reason when I tackle out this matter? So let me just give you an example. One may ask a question, or there might be an inquiry on, for example, there may be an inquiry on who performs better, boys or girls in mathematics. That may be an inquiry maybe at undergraduate level. Sorry, not at undergraduate, but at all level. Who performs better, boys or girls in mathematics? And with that question, one may decide to make a study, pick several schools, a few in urban areas, a few in rural areas, and retrieves results of O-level students from S1 going all the way to S4, and probably decides to pick some schools would be mixed, some schools would be single-sex schools, and makes a study to see what the performance was on, especially maybe same topic. If it's the same topic, they make a study and see what the performance is, looking at the grades and so on and so forth. And then from there, from that study determines whether it is the boys perform better or the girls perform better. Simply from that quantitative study, gets a number of students and then makes a study and makes an observation and an analysis, and then at the end will determine whether boys perform better or girls perform better based on these statistical values. That is positivism. That is typically positivism. Another person may decide to ask the question, may decide to have a very explorative question and say, who likes mathematics? May decide to make an inquiry on what is the perception of students, of girls towards mathematics at O-level. The person is simply making an inquiry, and the person may decide to go in a school where there are girls, sit with them in class, or even go in a school where there are both mixed boys and girls and say, I'm focusing on girls to understand their feelings towards the subject mathematics. And the person will sit with them, listen to them as they go through a mathematics class, hear their comments, and interview them, sit with them in a group discussion, really begin to understand how do these girls feel about the subject math. That is phenomenology. When you want to understand the reality of somebody, according to them, you're listening to them, you're not looking at their marks, but you're understanding, you're listening to them. What do they feel about this? How do they feel about this? When they're in the class with the teacher, what are their feelings towards it? You see now, here the study of valid reasoning, the reasoning is quite different. Yeah? So that is one way philosophy diverges. The second is ethics, the study of right and wrong. How should we act? So in this case, in the ethics part, there are people who say Those who go statistical are not going in depth. If they decide to find out girls are failing, they'll simply say girls are failing. But have you understood the reasoning behind it? And the person will say that is not fair research. Whereas the one of the positivist side will say, no, this is the most objective to find out who performs better, because you're getting you're picking data from a huge number of people. That is the ethical part of it. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. How do we know? The person who's looking at phenomenology will say, I need to understand the reality of the person. It is not my opinion that matters, it's the opinion of the participant. While the positivist will say it's the majority that matter. Ontology is study of being. So for each of these philosophical viewpoints, neither is wrong or right. It is simply depends on the question. Depends on the question that you have. Remember the meaningful question we talked about? It depends on the question that you have, the question that needs to be answered. So most of the things I've actually answered them in the discussion I had earlier. But when we look at positivists, we're dealing with positive facts. Yeah? Something that is observable. If we're asking who performs better, and there are more boys getting higher marks than girls, then automatically boys perform better. That is what we mean by observable facts, positive facts. It's either or. If this exists, then that is the case. If it doesn't, then no. It's normally referred to as the scientific method. However, doesn't mean that also the phenomenology is not scientific. It's also scientific. The objective is not only description, but prediction and explanation. By the time we talk about who performs better, it means we're already saying there has to be someone who performs better than the other. Whereas phenomenology does not predict. We are saying we don't know. If I'm going to find out how girls feel about mathematics, it means I don't know what their attitude is, what they feel about something. So the positivist research philosophy is quantitative in nature. It looks at what is measurable evidence. What is measurable evidence? This number of boys get this number of this usually above this mark, so therefore boys perform better. That is something measurable. Okay. While phenomenology, on the other hand, seeks to understand. Okay, phenomenology seeks to understand. So we want to understand the experience, what the experience of somebody, of a particular participant in something. We want to seek to understand. Yeah. So here, phenomena says that maybe for one girl, she's performing badly because of her context. Maybe she's in a home where girls are not encouraged. Therefore, that's why she performs better. Or she may be in an environment, because maybe for girls, confidence may be an issue where confidence is not at its right peak. So the time, the location, the culture, that's what's affecting her performance. So we don't just want to get her marks, we want to understand why. That is phenomenology. So here the outcome for phenomenology is it is descriptions which are expressed in the narrative, not in figures. Unlike the positivist approach, where we're looking at something measurable, in the phenomenology, we are looking at the narrative. Okay, we're looking at the narrative. Now, here a key point to note, that when you're doing your research, you don't necessarily have to go all positivists and forget the phenomenology, or go completely phenomenology and forget the positivist side. There are people who decide to take a mixed approach where they will say, my research, I really want to understand what is happening in a particular context. But for the sake of triangulation, for the sake of backing up my information, that I'm not just bringing out what people are saying, I can decide to, let's say, administer a questionnaire to ensure that I ensure that majority of the participants actually have seen this phenomena. They have experienced it. So you find someone who is maybe will give the positivist side, will give something measurable evidence, but then follow it up with a narrative that, in addition to what I got from let's say from questionnaires, in the interviews people said A, B, C, D, which supports the results of the questionnaire on this question. Yeah, so it isn't an either-or situation. We can't decide to combine the two. Do we have any questions so far?
Doctor, I'm kindly requesting you to repeat for me this slide about phenomenology.
Yes.
Because I've not got it clearly.
The philosophy of phenomenology. Okay. Let me give you a very, very specific example. We have all heard about female genital mutilation, or very specifically female circumcision. Not so?
Yes.
Yes. Now, we all know in most countries, I think in all countries, it has been, it's been criminalized, it's outlawed. In other words, the girl child is not supposed to be mutilated for whatever reason. We all know that.
Yes.
Yes.
And we all know why. We know that it is it's an extremely brutal. It's really a very brutal thing to do to a girl. It has long-term effects on a girl, and it is essentially not helpful at all to any woman whatsoever in any way. In some cases, there even death occurs because of it. But, however, in spite of all of this, women continue to perpetuate this act. And even there is a situation, I remember I saw a documentary where there is a woman, as a child, she was not circumcised, but as an adult, she made the decision to be circumcised. Okay? So, despite the evidence, measurable evidence that this is an extremely brutal act, that it doesn't help the woman in any way, there are researchers who have decided to try to understand, why do women continue to go to perform this act? Why? Now, it's not enough to hand out a questionnaire and ask these women why, because you will not get that explanation from a questionnaire. So what do? People decide to go, researchers decide to go into these communities and spend 6 months or even a year or even more with the community to truly understand why. It's only the experience of that woman telling you why she's doing it to her daughter. Or for instance, that woman who made the decision to go and do it as an adult. What was her experience? What was it that motivated her? What is it that motivates this mother to do it to her child? You won't get that answer from a questionnaire or spending one day. But it is sitting in the experience of those women so that you can truly understand why. So a researcher who goes and spends a year, 2 years with this community is a phenomenologist. It's someone going to sit down and understand from the perspective of the person who is going through it, that will understand, that will pick out. Very separate from the positivist who will decide to give a questionnaire to, let's say, finds out these are the communities in Uganda that do this, these are the communities in Somalia, these are the communities in South Sudan. Let me give a questionnaire and receive an answer. That, to understand that phenomena, you will not get it from a questionnaire. The questionnaire will not give you the answer. You need to spend time with these women to understand why. And when they give you the response, it will be a narrative. Yeah? It will be how long you've spent with this community for them to truly tell you why this thing is so important to them. David, have I answered your question? Was it David that asked the question?
No, it was me,
It was
George.
George William. Eh?
Yes.
Have you understood why? What have you understood? Phenomenology.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
doctor.
Sorry, I
Doctor,
can't.
may I ask?
Sorry.
Doctor, may I ask a question
Yes,
on the
please.
same? So does that mean that when you're going to do research, the way the phenomenologists do it, you need more time than the guys who do the positivism way?
Yes. But however, I also want to answer you also in another way, that your research may not necessarily be the phenomenologist side or the positivist side. Your research can decide to combine the two for the sake of saving time. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, if you're doing research and you're using both, for the time when you want to do right on the phenomenology side, you need to interact with the sample space.
Yes, the positivists look at sample space. A phenomenologist is not looking at sample space, it's looking at how deep they may have a sample space, a case study, but it's how deep
Yes.
they've gone.
Okay.
Yeah, it's how deep the person has gone. But
Okay.
I'll just give you an example. My research, the research I did at PhD level was so much on the phenomenology side, where I spent 2 years with the community. I didn't live with them, not necessarily, but I spent time with the healthcare community. Every time they had a workshop, every time they had training, I spent time with them. I picked out a lot of things, even though I was looking at the ICT side, so that even by the time the ICT element came in, I'd spent so much time to understand the things that surround a healthcare community, that when I was trying to see its relationship with the ICT artifact that was being implemented, I was trying to relate how it was going to affect adoption of this ICT artifact. So I'd spent about 2 years with them. Yeah. And I picked up a lot of things. So I spent that time simply observing, group discussions, then eventually interviews. But however, along the way, I adopted a questionnaire just to triangulate to see if I gave the questionnaire to 50 people, would they still relate those things to this artifact? That it wasn't just for my interviews, but I also used the questionnaire to ascertain, to validate my findings on the phenomenology side. Now, it can also be done on the positivist side, where somebody administers a questionnaire to a big number of people, but follows it up with interviews, maybe to understand further things that came out from a questionnaire. Okay? So that they use that narrative to say that, oh, the questionnaire revealed this. And in the interview, it was explained further with maybe this participant, with this interview participant. They explained further why this was experienced this way, why they had this attitude to this. Emmanuel, have you understood how to use both sides?
Yes, doctor. Thank you.
I hope you can hear me. This side it's raining. I hope everyone can hear me.
I can hear you. You are clear on my side.
Okay, thank you. So that was the research philosophy. Let's look at the research approach. So we shall see the research philosophy very much determines what the research approach is. Yeah. So we have two research approaches, deductive and inductive. So deductive is related to positivism. Yeah. It's related to positivism. Let's go a bit further on what the deductive approach is. You have a theory. Yeah? You have a theory that is taken to be true. Take an example. Have all of you heard about the term theory? Technology adoption model. Have you heard about it?
Doc, not me.
Pardon?
Me, I have not heard about it.
Okay. Luda, have you heard of it?
No.
Okay.
I haven't.
You can some of you can just Google it. It's the technology adoption model. It's a theory that has been developed over time that can make predictions on whether users will adopt a certain technology or not. And this is a theory that has been used a lot in ICT to determine if a particular technology is going to be adopted by users or not. So you have a theory, term is just one of them, and it makes a prediction that X will occur. To take an example, term says that if a technology is considered to be useful and easy to use, then it will be adopted. But if it is not considered to be useful or easy to use, then it will not be adopted. Yeah? It even goes further to say that women will adopt a technology if they consider it easy to use. And men will be more likely to adopt a technology they consider it to be useful. So that theory makes a prediction. Then we test that theory. If X does occur, then the theory is supported. If X does not occur as predicted, then the theory has been challenged. This theory has been challenged. That is deductive, the deductive approach. Okay, so this very much follows the positivist philosophy, which looks at measurable evidence, testing a theory. So normally, deductive approach goes with what we call a hypothesis. Yeah, let me move this below. It goes with a hypothesis. So a hypothesis is a statement that is proposing a relationship between two concepts. So I gave you an example of term, which says a woman is more likely to adopt a technology if she perceives it easy to use. Yeah? So here I'm going to give an example of hypothesis. You have age and then gross annual income.
No, I have.
Yeah? Where we might say age is related. The older you are, the more likely your gross annual income is higher. Yeah? So you have a theory. So from that theory, we develop a hypothesis. We test that hypothesis. through observation, and then we confirm if it is true or not. Yeah, that is the deductive approach. Then we have the inductive, which is related to phenomenology. This one builds on theory. It builds on theory. So here you may have a question: what is the experience of working at a particular firm? We interview people that are working in this place to find out what is their experience. We analyze the data and then we formulate a theory about job satisfaction. Okay? Now I'll give you an example of the research I did, which was very much a fit from the inductive approach. The question, some of the simple questions I have was, what is sustainable in a rural context? What could be sustainable in a rural context? Yeah. There was an inquiry in research of ICT 4D or things like mHealth applications in a developing context are not sustainable. So the question was, what can be sustained in terms of, can we create an mHealth application? Can we design one, implement it? And after the donor agency has pulled out, will this be sustainable? So the question is, what can be sustainable? So for my research, it was building theory to understand what is sustainable and what is not sustainable. What are those variables within a developing context that can support sustainability and those that can hamper it? That was, we are building theory because we are going out to explore. This is unlike the term theory, which is looking at adoption, where term, over the years of research, managed to develop a theory that can predict adoption. Now, in my case, we wanted to predict sustainability. So it was, my research was exploratory in nature. You're looking for the variables. Now, in this case, we're looking at for the things that can create job satisfaction in a particular firm. Maybe, let us take an example. AI is something new. Those people who work in an AI environment, what are the things that can create job satisfaction? Knowing that AI may one day take over your job. What is it that can create job satisfaction, let's say, in an AI environment? That's a new area. It's exploratory in nature. So the inductive approach, human beings interpret the world according to their consciousness. Yeah? Human beings interpret their world. So unlike the deductive approach where we are automatically making a prediction, in this case, in the inductive approach, we're not making a prediction. We're going out to explore, to find out how people feel about a particular phenomena. And here, we depend on people telling their own story, narratives. Unlike deductive, where we're depending on something measurable, here we're depending on what someone is saying, their narrative. So in inductive, the context matters. Context matters. So a lot of the times in inductive, we see things like people making a case study. Yeah, you are doing your research within a case study, a particular context. So the context matters. How I experience something matters. Yeah, I'll give you a simple example. Online learning was quickly adopted in private universities during COVID than in government universities in Uganda. Someone can decide to understand why is the context of private universities much more conducive to adoption of online learning as opposed to public universities. So the context, there someone is trying to understand the context. Yeah. The lecturers in the private university, why did they quickly adopt as opposed to a lecturer in a public university? The student in a private university, why does this student quickly adopt? There you understand the narrative matters. The student, just giving out a questionnaire is not enough. The narrative matters. So in inductive approach, we start with observation. From the observation, we build patterns, and these patterns will later on become a tentative hypothesis, which then later can develop into a theory. Any questions so far?
Now, doctor, are these steps that when someone is taking on such approaches should go through all they normally go through in order to achieve the entire approach?
Not necessarily. Take an example. Most of you will not develop a theory as you go along. Most likely, no. You may come up with some conclusions which can be tested, but not necessarily that you'll actually reach a theory. This is simply to show you that the contrasting differences between the two. The contrasting differences between the two. Most likely for most of you, you will carry out your research and come up with some conclusions, some tentative conclusions, which somebody else can build on, and maybe with time comes up with a theory. But most likely you're not going to go to that step of coming up with a theory as at master's level. Is that one clear?
Yes, doctor.
It is possible to combine the two approaches. It is possible to combine. Most of the time, you will find someone saying they are going to use mixed methods. Most likely, it is because they are trying to combine the two. It's quite rare to find someone with a hypothesis, then an explorative question in their research. It's quite rare, I must say. I haven't seen it at master's level, but it's possible to combine methods. So that one we can talk about it later in detail. The next stage, the next approach, component of research after the research philosophy, research approach is the research strategy or method. Now, this is a separate thing. We're going to talk about it. We're going to have a separate lecture on research methods. We won't go so much into them, but this is where we find your research philosophy, research approach determines your research method. Okay, so these are the research methods that are available. Again, I'm going to say we're going to discuss this in another lecture in detail, not here. But your research method, your research approach determines what your research method is going to be. Now, for most of you, or not most of you, all of you are going to design an artifact, whether you're an ICT or IS. These two research methods are extremely important. Yeah, extremely important, very, very important. Most likely you're going to use them. Most likely, most of you are going to use case study. Most likely. Okay? These are research methods most likely you're going to use. But let's continue. Experiment design, all these, I'm not going to discuss them now because we're going to discuss them in detail in a different lecture. Yeah, we're going to discuss them in detail in a different lecture. Let's simply go to the next section of the onion, which is the time horizon. What time will you take? How will you approach in terms of your research, in terms of what period will you collect your research? We have two essentially. We have cross-sectional and longitudinal. Yeah, cross-sectional and longitudinal. Most of us use cross-sectional studies, meaning I will do my research in the period within 2025 or maybe in 2026, between a period of 6 months. Maybe I'm going to have a case study and I'm going to collect my data within that period. Okay, so take an example. Let us say I have designed an application. I implement it within a particular case or several case studies, maybe in 2026, between March and October. And in that time, I implement and then I collect data on how users of that period, 2026, between March and October, users of that period, how they responded to the application that I implemented. Yeah. So that is a typical cross-sectional study. You are collecting data for that period, March 2026 to October 2026. That is a typical cross-sectional study. And that's what most of us do. Now, what is significant about that, about collecting data for that period? Let us say I've implemented a mobile application. Okay? As a master's student, I have designed a mobile application. Maybe I implement it in a particular context. Let us say in a healthcare context, in a hospital in Kampala for healthcare workers and maybe healthcare seekers. Now, it's very significant that I talk about this because the healthcare worker who is currently in a healthcare facility in Kampala is not the same as a healthcare worker that will exist maybe 30 years from now. Not so.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they are not going to be the same. The exposure to technology is not the same. Levels of education is not the same. The society is not, they are not the same. So the results of now cannot be compared to the results of 30 years ahead or 30 years before. That is why a cross-sectional study, it's very significant because you are picking data from a group of people, a context that will not exist again. Will not exist again. Then you have the longitudinal study where you collect data from different points in time. I'll give you an example. I read about a study on the BBC, it was done in the UK, where a group of researchers were studying a group of children from the time they were born until I think 10 years later. So they followed these children, they collected data when they were 0 days, then they became 5, then maybe they became 2, then 5, then 7, so on and so forth. They kept from the same group of children. So at each point in time, they were collecting data. That's a longitudinal study. There are others who decide to go statistical. So for example, someone may decide to study income levels of Ugandans, let's say spanning from the 1960s to now. Yeah, income levels, maybe from those who are formerly employed. Now, Uganda Bureau of Statistics most likely has this data from the 1960s to date. So somebody can decide to do that kind of longitudinal study. They are not necessarily interacting with participants, but they are collecting secondary data from a statistical institution like Uganda Bureau of Statistics. That's also another example of longitudinal studies. Any questions so far on those two types?
No, doctor.
Okay. Studies can also be explorative. Hello? Yes, please.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello. 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 Hello.
Studies can also be explorative. Yes, please.
Doctor, I was just inquiring,
Yes, please.
for particularly these research methods that you've given us, the research studies, do they have a particular moment in time when you have to consider them? Do we use them at master level? Because when you talked about the longitudinal study, I saw it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, the longitudinal study, depending if that, for example, the example I gave you for the study done in UK, that takes a that takes a long time. But if it is someone using statistical data like with Uganda Bureau of Statistics, that doesn't take a long time because it is already data that is there, and you're simply using secondary data for your studies. In ICT, I remember I asked somebody, there's somebody I think amongst us who is with NITAU. I remember someone saying that NITAU also collects statistical data on ICT in Uganda. We have one of us who is in NITAU.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes, but most of the work is collected with ICT Ministry.
Okay, so it's the
The final
ministry.
report.
So it's the ministry that collects it, yeah?
Yeah, the final.
But who is the custodian, let's say? That let's say an ICT
Custodian.
if an ICT student wanted to do that kind of research.
There's a directorate under research and planning. I could get more information on that and see who can provide us this.
Okay.
By Monday.
Okay, thank you so much, Edward. So that could be another source, David, where someone can decide to say they use that kind of secondary data to do their research.
Yeah.
David, is that unclear?
No.
David,
I think Edward left on his audio. Yeah, but you have answered. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you. Yeah, Edward, if you can kindly me, thank you. So our research can also, apart from the time perspective, whether your research is longitudinal or cross-sectional, your research will either be exploratory, descriptive, or explanatory. And this goes back to research philosophy and research approach. Yeah. Exploratory. This one is seeking to understand a phenomena. You're exploring. Yeah. You're seeking to understand a phenomena. Descriptive. It may be a phenomena where somebody knows, a community understands something but needs to have a more concrete description about a phenomena. So exploratory is very much on the scale of phenomenology, and then descriptive is also there, but is now moving further towards positivism. Then finally, we have explanatory or analytical. This is highly positivist or deductive in nature, where if you explain, if it's explanatory, this is where you already have some explanation, but you want to go further. With the where you have prediction, where you actually have a prediction at the end of it. So everything depends on the goals or the purpose of your research. So explanatory, you're finding out what is happening. You're seeking to have new insights. You're asking questions. You're assessing a new phenomena in a new light. So exploratory, you can begin by searching literature to see what people say about a particular phenomena, a particular subject. Okay? There are things that are yet unknown. So let me give an example. When I was doing my research, my PhD research, and I was focusing on sustainability of ICT artifacts in a developing context. So have all of you heard about ICT4D? Have you heard about ICT4D?
Yes, Doctor, I've heard about it.
Yeah, so those who haven't, ICT4D is basically information communication technology for development. So normally we see ICT in in corporations, in organizations. At university, all of you see them in the different organizations where you work. But when we put ICT in a developing context, so for example, in a rural hospital, in education, we put it in agriculture to support farmers. When you see people who are taking, maybe, let's say, patients of tuberculosis are being sent messages to remind them about taking drugs. That is a typical example of ICT 4D. When you see healthcare workers in rural context using their phones to send in monthly reports to the ministry on how certain drugs are being consumed, that is a typical example of ICT 4D. Now, when I was reading on the issue of sustainability, what I discovered that the subject of sustainability of ICT 4D was well known. What was not well known is why. There was no rigorous research that had been done to find out why something is not sustainable. Okay, so it was a new area that needed to be explored. Okay, a new area. So it started from literature, and where literature is saying this area has not been tackled. There isn't enough, there's no empirical research that has been done on the subject of sustainability. This becomes very different. Take an example. If we were to look at the literature on COVID-19, on the actual virus itself, I'm sure there's a lot of literature that has been published on that, where we know what the virus is. Initially, people were exploring, but now people do know the virus. They know how it attacks. They know how long it takes to survive or not survive within its host. If it's outside its host, that literature is a lot. They can even make a prediction that if this virus attacks this kind of individual, this will be the reaction. Yeah. So the exploratory studies are seeking to discover something that where little is known. Then the descriptive, you have an idea, but you want to make an accurate profile of that phenomena. You want to make an accurate profile of that phenomena. The phenomena can be a particular population, a particular type of people, event, situation, whatever it could be. So normally, the descriptive study follows an exploratory research, which has brought some insight, but now we want to have something more descriptive, a clearer picture. Yeah? Then explanatory, it looks at causal relationships. We already know that there's a causal relationship between this and that. Yeah? For example, we already know there's a causal relationship between a COVID-19 virus attacking individuals. Yes, David, you have a question or comment?
No, doctor, I don't have anything.
Okay. Was there someone who had a question or comment?
Yes, it's me, doctor. I need more clarification on descriptive study.
On the descriptive study. Okay.
Yes, doctor.
Let us say at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, an ICT or IS student decides to make a study on e-learning and its adoption. And because it's the first time, he or she is making an exploratory study to see what is the experience of both academic staff and students as they are being introduced to online learning. So it will be basically exploratory, just to understand the experience of a Ugandan academic staff, academic lecturer, a lecturer and students, and a student or students, the experience of it. That is exploratory in nature. So once these studies have come out, and then maybe these studies are revealing difficulties, maybe the older professors are finding difficulties. You have another lecturer in a public university who is also experiencing difficulty. The students in a rural area, they're experiencing difficulty. Then you have others who are giving an experience of delight. It's a new area. It has opened up new horizons for me. That is all the revelations that are coming out. Then after that, after all these studies, somebody else says, we need to have a proper profile picture. What does a lecturer in a public university feel about it? A lecturer who is based in a rural context, what is the experience? A student in the urban areas, what is the experience? A student in urban areas, what is now the study is becoming more descriptive, more well-defined. William, are you getting is it
Yes,
clear?
doctor.
Okay. So now in explanatory, you have causal relationships. So in the descriptive, causal relationships may have been identified. So someone may decide to have a study saying the poor network in rural areas prevents adoption of online learning. That's a causal relationship. And the person wants to prove or disprove this causal relationship. So a researcher may decide to say, I want to prove or disprove that a lecturer who is based in rural areas is less likely to adopt e-learning because of poor network. And then the researcher goes ahead to do questionnaires and even interviews of lecturers based in rural areas to prove or disprove this explanatory research, this causal relationship. That is typically an explanatory study. Do we have any questions so far? If not, it is possible to have a multi-method approach. One can decide to combine the two, especially in order to see that, number one, they get as much data as possible. Number two, to triangulate, what we refer to as triangulation. That what I have found during the narratives, is it true if I give out a questionnaire that I found it in a number of participants, they also experienced this? That is triangulation. Two, also to save time. Qualitative research takes a lot of time. With qualitative research or the inductive approach, it's not how wide you go, but how deep you go. Not how wide you go, but how deep you go. So you may spend time with maybe 2 or 3 participants, but 2 or 3 participants may not give you an accurate picture. So you may interview 2 or 3 people, then you decide to give the questionnaire to several people who are also in the same context, to see that the variables I have picked out, the things I have picked out during the interviews, can I also find them if I interview people who are in the same context, more people? So we have to bear in mind that your research objectives, we shall talk about research objectives when you talk about research questions. It depends on what your research objective is. Okay? So like I said, to save time, you can use multi-method approach, and then also for purposes of triangulation. Okay? I want to see that the questions I have asked, maybe during interviews, if I give a questionnaire probing the same questions to a bigger number of people who are in the same context, would I still get the same responses? Yeah? And that is typically triangulation. Credibility of your research findings. Consider your own audience.
Hello?
Yes, please, David.
Yes, I just have one question.
Yes, please.
So what would be the effect of using a multi-method approach over the other two methods that you shared before?
What would be the, sorry?
What could be the effect of using this over the other two studies that you gave us before?
What could be the effect? Number one,
Yeah.
it first of all depends on what your research problem is and what your research objective is. Yeah. If your research is really seeking to explore, then stick with that. But however, like I said, my research was more or less exploratory, but in the process of exploring, I decided to also administer questionnaires for the sake of triangulation, for the sake of determining that these things that I've discovered through observation, through group discussions, through interviews, if I distributed to a number of healthcare workers, a bigger number, will I still pick the same, will the same point be picked out? Yeah. So the mixed method part, first of all, it depends on what your research method is. That's one. But for most students I see at master's level, for the sake of saving time, especially if your research is more of exploratory and descriptive, you'll choose to have an exploratory multi-method approach. Even if your research is more of positivist, you're going deductive, you're going quantitative, in other words. Someone will say, I will use a survey questionnaire, but I will interview a few people just to understand further. Maybe the questionnaire will not help me understand further. For me to be able to understand further this phenomena. So David, it depends on what is your research question, what is your research objective? Why are you using it? So in one case, it can help you with triangulation. In the other case, it can help you understand further. Is that one clear?
It's very clear, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Okay. Credibility of your findings. Again, we want that our findings are credible. We want that our findings are credible. So the multi-method approach can help us to make our research a bit more credible. And then again, if it is phenomenology, if you're more qualitative, make sure that you have ample time in the field. Yeah? Make sure you have ample time in the field. The more time you spend in the context, the better. There is, I one time attended a research workshop where there was a young lady who was doing her research in Tanzania. Her research was more on the social science side, and it was more on the feminist side of research. She was trying to understand the perspective of a woman in a mixed marriage context. So she was doing her research in Tanzania, and her research subject was a white woman, I think a white British woman who was married to a Congolese musician. And this was her only test subject, her only participant. And she spent a period of 1 year with this lady. Because it was qualitative, she would go with her shopping, she would go with her hospital appointments, all of that. She spent all that time trying to understand this woman's world from a mixed marriage perspective. Yeah, so that was 1 whole year spent. That gave credibility to her because she really took time to understand and observe and pick narrations from this woman. Then let's look at the positivist side, the quantitative side. It's not how deep, but how wide. The more people of the same homogeneous group you're picking data from, the better. Okay? Usually they say not less than 100. So let us say you are doing research on e-learning adoption in private universities, and your research is going to take a positivist approach. Number one, you need to understand what is a typical private university in Uganda. Then you find out how many private universities we have in Uganda. How many students are in these universities? What is their makeup? What would you say a typical university student is? And then from each, the different groups, different types of students, you must make sure as you're going to supply administer this questionnaire, you must pick a sample size from each group. If it's masters, from each group. If it is the students, those who are from urban, those who are from rural, pick from each group. Those who are international students, pick from that group as well. And then from each university in Uganda, make sure that each university is represented. Those who are from the universities that are from have a religious affiliation, those who are from a purely private perspective, those are from universities that are international in nature. All of them you must pick, so that you are you fairly represent all your participants. So that gives credibility to your findings. Any questions so far?